Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Imperfect Men's Club podcast. My name is Mark Ilward, and I'm here as always with my colleague, good friend, and co-host Jim Gurley. And as we always do, we had a pretty vibrant pregame conversation where we bring together things that have happened in our lives and dinners we have, or meetings we've been to, or conversations with others, and we surprisingly still come up with, we kind of come to these conversations, Jim, thinking and talking about, if not the same things, similar things. And as we have been pretty consistent doing, we're going to use this formula that we've gotten comfortable with, where it's a self-hyphen word. And in today's conversation, we're going to focus specifically on self-compassion. And before I read that, I just, I'm going to ask your opinion, Jim, but I think what seems to always happen, and I think this is good, is with, like, for instance, the word compassion. We're going to be talking about compassion just as much as we're going to be talking about self-compassion. And it seems that when you turn the self-hyphen word internally, that enables you to be more effective about sharing that experience externally with other people. And we can expand on exactly what that means. But the word compassion and then the word self-compassion, they're not the same thing, but they share some similarities. So we kind of both thought that was interesting. But what's your take on self-compassion, Jim?
Compassion, obviously, it's a word we throw around, we use a lot, but in the context of the Imperfect Men's Club, our tagline is the imperfection is the perfection, based on this framework that we created of these 5 areas of our life, and in the no particular order, but of course, as a man, our career, our life's work is very important to us. Our mental and physical health is very important. So it's going on whether we're aware of it or not. Our relationship with others, our relationship with money, our relationship with the world. So it always comes back to the center of this wheel of life, and in the center is self. And every episode now has become about the hyphen. And the first one, the most important one, starts with self-awareness. So it's one thing to have conversations about these different things, but are we self-aware this is going on in our mind, and what our thoughts are become our life. So it's just, once a week talking about it. Why don't you go read the definition, and then I'll share a story that inspired this episode, of this topic for this story. And I also thought what was great in the pregame, like always, is how you found yourself unknowingly, voluntarily giving up, something that you do every day. That was, in my opinion, probably the most profound way to have compassion for other people, particularly people you don't, let's just say, care for, or had a really negative impact on your life. So just being self-aware that that's still running you, and then acknowledging that. So I'll let you tell that story yourself when we get a little further along. But
Yeah.
yeah, start off with the definition that I found, and of course, thanks to technology, you can have these thoughts. I can run them through AI, and then within a couple seconds, we can curate them in a way that we can have a conversation about how this affects us every day in our lives.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by how easy it is to distill and curate information now, just
Mhm.
to your point. But
Yeah.
yeah, self-compassion means treating yourself with kindness and warmth during hard times instead of harsh judgment. It includes three core parts: self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. Psychologically, it lowers stress, builds emotional strength, and replaces the inner critic with a supportive voice.
Yeah, lot more there than I realized. And as you said, the word is one thing. You put a self in front of it, and it doesn't change the context, but becomes about your thoughts and how that works. But taking that aside, this is a story. This was actually just a couple of days ago. Um, a very good friend, a former rugby player, great guy. Obviously an immigrant, came from the Pacific Islands, and we talk every once in a while. But he owns a construction company, and just called me out of the blue and just to say hello, like he does occasionally, and asked, uh, he was doing a cabinet installation, so it was obviously something that he knows that I'm in that industry. So um, I said, "Yo, I'd like to tell you know who's the cabinet company, blah blah blah. I'd like to see the project." He says, "Yeah." So he sent me the address. I said, "I think I'm going to be over there on Tuesday. I'll stop by and you know visit with you and check out the job." He was in the middle of the installation, so on the way there, it's the other side of the bay. I'm driving across the bridge. I'm in there, and I'm sitting at the stoplight, and all of a sudden, bang! I get hit from behind at the stop
Dang.
sign. Yeah. So of course, everybody that's experienced that. Luckily, it wasn't like I didn't have a neck injury. I just had it was obviously somebody hit my car. So I get out of the car. He's like, I don't want to have time for this. I don't want to deal with this. And of course, I look at my car and his license plate had indented into my bumper. So
Mm.
then I look at him and he's like, I'm sorry. So I get out of the car because it's a lot of traffic and the traffic's not moving. So I said, hey, you got to pull over. Okay. In the meantime, I take a picture of his license plate and hope that he follows me because remember I'm in front of him, right? So
Mhm.
we're on the off ramp, and he follows me. I'm expecting him to run, which is
Mm.
pretty common, especially in
Yeah.
California. I think there's at this point there's a 50-50 chance that he's going to go straight. I'm going to go right, and but he follows me, which I went, okay, that's good. And at least I don't have to go chasing him through town or whatever. I did have his license plate. So we pull over, and right away he jumps out of the car. And the car is really beat up. I mean, really beat up. Like the left headlight was out. The car was old. It was uh, anyway. He says, "Oh, I'm sorry." Da da da. And at first I asked him, "Okay, give me your driver's license." And he hands me a driver's license. It's out of state. The I asked for his registration. Of course, it was expired. He doesn't have any insurance, right? And he's so I have to make this decision. What do I do? Do I call the police? That's what I should do, right? Because, but then all of a sudden he had these interesting eyes, right? He wasn't confrontational at all. And he did the one thing I asked him to do. He, he pulled over and he was trying to do the right thing. He was also trying to tell me that, hey, I don't have any, I don't have any insurance. It's not my he started to tell me that he was dropping off his kids and he was going to drive back to Oregon and his English wasn't too good. I thought he was Polynesian because he had a Hawaii driver's license, but I think he spoke Spanish, so his English wasn't that great. But as this is going on, I'm realizing this guy has nothing,
Mhm.
nothing. So I asked him. I said, if you don't have any insurance, you shouldn't be driving this car, right? And my car's, it's not super expensive, but a bumper on my car is a couple $1,000, right? Or to replace
Yeah.
something, that's just what it cost. But as this goes on, I have to make this decision: do I call the police and get a report, or so I just kept asking him questions, and he kept answering them, and then I made the decision. He said that he had a job in Oregon. That's where he was driving back to. But he said something that I'll never forget. He says, "I'm really sorry. I'm tired." And you could tell he had those eyes where he was just tired.
Mhm.
He wasn't on drugs. He wasn't drunk. And again, he wasn't confrontational. And he just had those eyes and he was like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Because he knows if I call the police, they're going to take his car because his
Mhm.
car's not. And
At
that's
the
right.
very least. Yeah.
He
At the
gave me his
very least.
registration. I was surprised it was expired. But everything he said was true. And I said, so I have to now make a decision. Do I? But all of a sudden I had this feeling of, you know, if I call the police, they're going to take his car. He's not going to get back to Oregon. He's never going to probably see his kids again. And there's a real good chance I'm never going to get money from him. But that's okay. I'm fortunate in a position I can handle this.
Hmm.
I have insurance. I'll figure this out. But I don't think it deserves taking the one thing he has left, and that is his car.
Yeah.
And so Obviously, I let him go. Oh, that's the other thing I did. I called his number. I said, "Give me your phone number," and he didn't have his phone on him. I said, "Where's your phone at?" He said, "It's in the car." So I walked over to the car, looked in the front seat, and my number came through. So he gave me the right number.
Hmm. Hmm.
See, and that's ultimately what I said. I said, I'm not gonna, this is, I'm not gonna call the police. And you know why? Because you were honest with me. And I had those eyes. I had to trust my intuition that he was telling the truth, but I also had to trust that I was never going to get any money from him. Even if at that moment, I had decided, even if he tried to give me money, I probably would give it back to him because he needs that money way more than I need that money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so yeah, so then I just I had a good day, but there was something that was it was good for me as much as it was good for him to have self
Yeah.
compassion
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and
It's a great move, dude. It's a great move. I applaud you for the move. I find myself when I do in situations like that, there's a lot of moving parts there. I mean, at the end of the day, you got to trust your gut.
yeah.
If your default is to try and be a good guy,
Hmm.
without exposing yourself to risk or harm, and um, and you gave yourself a time to get from the emotion of being struck from behind to the objectivity of, okay, now I know what I got going on here. Now I know what the
Yes.
situation is.
Yep.
And that's,
Yeah.
we talk about that in the context of pausing in the face of emotion all the time,
Yep.
right?
Hmm.
You gave yourself the opportunity for the good guy in you to come out because you
Hmm.
dissipated that emotion with questions, which is the
Hmm.
best way to do that, is to ask questions, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's a whole lesson in communication that I will leave alone for the episode
Hmm.
today. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely compassion, and I think that
Yeah. But it's also self-awareness. I think it goes back
it
to
is.
what we're talking about,
Yeah.
self-awareness. And I'm not sure I would have reacted like that maybe 10 years ago, certainly not 15 years ago. But the difference was um, it was really resource, like gratitude, right? He could have hit me a lot harder and I could have been in a car accident. The car wasn't totaled. There was a
Hmm.
little bumper. It was an imprint of his license plate. Not that
Hmm.
big of a deal, right?
Yeah.
I also had this kind of gratitude that one, I wasn't more hurt
Hmm.
physically. My car it wasn't that bad. And
Hmm.
two, he was sincere.
Yeah.
He he was trying. He wasn't lying and he was being truthful. And that's all you can ask of somebody. He shouldn't be driving his car. And I even told him, I said, you shouldn't be driving this car. But then he looked up at me. I looked at his eyes and he's like, this is all I have. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I'll give you a quick story. I didn't think about this until I was listening to you, but I rent to a tenant on my
mm-hmm,
property. I have two homes on my property, and I live in one and I rent the other. And I just signed up the guy that lives in the front again. He's a young man, and he probably won't be listening to this. So, and I'm not saying anything I wouldn't say to him. We've had this discussion. He's neurodivergent,
mm-hmm.
and
Yeah, I think you told me. Yeah.
pretty significantly. And
Mm-hmm,
how that manifests itself is my front yard is cluttered with
mm-hmm,
hoses and plants and bags of dirt, and he loves
mm-hmm,
to plant things. He's completely irresponsible in regard to
mm-hmm,
picking things up. And I wrestled with this for a couple of years. He pays the rent on time.
mm-hmm,
He's not a bad guy, and he just doesn't notice the
mm-hmm,
things that a person without this neurodivergence would notice. He literally, sometimes when I talk to him, I'm like, do you even understand what I'm saying? And he's a
mm-hmm,
nurse. He works in a hospice. He takes care of old people that are dying, you
mm-hmm,
know, and that's probably takes its toll as well. And so I just made a decision just the other day because everybody that's in my life, my girlfriend, my kids are like, why don't you just get a new tenant? This guy's a pain in the ass. I'm like, yeah,
mm-hmm.
but he is and he isn't, right?
Yeah.
What's the downside to having a front
Yes.
yard that's a
Yeah.
little bit cluttered, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
That's a very cool story. And you trust them. And that's essentially you said that's a
there's
kind
so
of,
many. I could put him in such a bind,
yeah.
right? Because I remember the day he came to my house and asked me. He was in the driveway, and I said, "Can I help you?" And he said, "Yeah." Or do you own the place?
Mm-hmm,
Because there was a for rent sign. It was empty.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
filling up a place you get a couple of months without rent, it's a pain in the
Mhm.
ass, right? It's like
Yeah.
that's a
Right.
few $1,000s. It becomes an inconvenience pretty quickly. And I'm
Hmm.
like, and when he asked me that day, I started to get the impression that because he said, well, I had to leave the place I was in because they didn't like my dog. And
Hmm.
now I know that that wasn't the case. He's got a beautiful boxer that's just
Hmm.
well behaved, as I love
Hmm.
dogs. He was asked to leave because he probably was cluttering the place he was at, right?
Sure.
But
Yeah.
I didn't know that at the time. But I
Yeah.
think these kinds of moves, it's like
Well,
that pays dividends for the rest of your life, you
right.
know?
Well, then I think this like I said where the episode really is going to go is this common humanity, just
Yeah.
humanity and people. And at the end of the day, that's our lives, that's our community, that's the people. So we can, we talked about it. We can look at the mainstream media or just the news in general, and you can read about things, but those aren't real people. They're not related to us. So I think what this episode is really about is about common humanity and how important that is, and to not just think about it, but to live it out with the interactions that we have, just as you did with your tenant. That's pretty cool. But yeah, let's get through these because I think there's some really good stuff here, and I don't want to run out of time and not share the core
Yeah,
elements and yeah.
we'll get to as many as we can. I think we broke it down. You broke it down into categories, and the first
Yeah.
one is called core elements. And the first
Hmm.
core element is self-kindness, being gentle with yourself instead of angry when you feel or feel pain or fail at something. And then
Hmm. So
yeah,
self kind of be angry with yourself. So this is talking about what self compassion is, that you're
a component of self-compassion is self-kindness. And
yeah, to be nice
self-kindness,
to yourself. So now
being nice
we're
to
we're
yourself.
we're 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 shifting from the relationship we have with others and humanity to this is the conversation we're having with ourselves, because
Well, I would
that's like you
also
said.
suggest to you that part of the reason that you were kind to him is because you've been kind to yourself, right?
Good point. Like I said, it's about talk about self awareness. Yeah, I probably that's part of it because I
Yeah.
because they go together. I think that was your earlier point.
Well, if
You
you
know,
don't like yourself, you're much less likely to treat other
interesting.
people well, because
Yeah.
we
Yeah. And that's
project
just
who
the
we
whole
are.
subconscious versus the
Yeah.
conscious mind of
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
actions. Yeah. Interesting.
Well, I
Okay.
think the next one being common humanity as a core element of self-compassion. And to your point, I think that I talk about this in the context of my own experience. What did I get out of my divorce? Well, one of the things I got was just that,
Mhm.
this idea that, that everybody struggles, and I'm not looking to win any contests. I'm not looking to be the guy that struggles more than somebody else. I'm just going to be like, I got two choices at the end of this, like,
Mhm.
am I going to be good to myself or am I going to beat the shit out of myself, And
Yeah.
but I
Well,
think the other component,
this is what inspired the episode. It says this is right here, common humanity.
yeah.
It's like you said, it's knowing that suffering and mistakes happen to all people, not
Mhm.
just you. That is exactly what happened. I realized that he's not perfect. Nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. It happens to all people, but have some compassion for when people are in these difficult situations. Don't make it worse if
Yeah.
you can. And
Yeah.
so,
So I think the third core element is mindfulness. And I think that's to your point, I think self-awareness, right? It's like
mhm,
seeing your painful thoughts and feelings clearly without hiding them or blowing them out of proportion. I
mhm,
think that and I find this kind of work just really satisfying. And to me, it's like, what can I get better at today? All this shit,
mhm.
just a little bit better every day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. But you find that people that are not that don't have self-compassion do blow things out of proportion. They
mhm.
make little things into big things. They're not very self-aware. And this is where all this drama comes and conflict. And I, unfortunately, I think that's become a common behavior. Yeah. So let's go on to the next
I
one.
think the last point I'll make about that is I think that we communicate so often now online, and
Hmm.
you can hide behind that. You don't need to be compassionate. You can be meaner, you can be tougher, you can be more accusatory. Most people do things online they would never do face to face with another human being.
Hmm.
And I think that's part of the issue. That's part of the problem today.
Yeah. Yeah. And this next one is psychology. I'm really into really understanding the functionality of the human brain, right? The neuroscience of these topics to me become very relevant because it understands how philosophy plays a part in every part of our lives. But
Well, it's to kind of what we were alluding to, that when you do things like this, when you express compassion to others, you benefit, and you
Mm.
benefit psychologically, physically, and what
Yep.
this particular category cites is how the body can get calm from this. It
Mm.
lowers stress, and your heart rate will slow down.
Hmm.
You know, literally, you could probably think back to that episode, and your heart was beating pretty hard at the beginning of it, and when you're
There
driving
was.
away,
Yeah.
you're probably very calm. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, and then it shifts your brain. You know, it quiets any defense network that might be going on. It lights
Uh,
up the caregiving brain circuits, as they say.
uh,
And then I think it says promotes growth, so it boosts
what's
your.
a shift brain activity? So again, I'm raised from a distance. So treats defense network and lights up giving brain
Caregiving brain
circuits. What's it
circuits.
doing to the brain? It's
It's just lighting it up, you know. I mean,
yeah.
in the work that I used to do, you know, we at the end of it, we used to put these caps on with electrodes, and they would recognize brain waves and activity. And you know, when people are happy, they're all lit up. You know, I think it was blue or green, and when they're not, or they're
Interesting.
angry, it's all
Yeah.
red. You know, so it literally is changing the circuitry in your brain because you're being compassionate, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So we're going back to more common humanity core
No, I
aspects.
think you missed one. Did you get that one?
No,
Promote health.
I swung at it pretty quick, but I'll read
Okay.
it again. It
Yeah.
promotes growth. It boosts motivation because you want to improve, not because you fear punishment.
Oh,
So,
interesting. Wanna go now. Yeah, that because I think some people it's the opposite, right? So fear punishment, so that they're driven without self-compassion, you're driven more by fear of something, the punishment of fear, than you are. Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think, you know, I think this desire to improve is, you know, we talk about that a lot. I just trying to get a little better every day.
Hmm.
And what you just described, that experience that you just described, definitely made you better a little bit that day. And
Hmm.
I'm sure you felt it. You've already described feeling it, you know?
Well, like I said, I've reacted to these these types of things. It's a complete opposite, probably, the first half of my life or more. So I'm just reflecting on, um, yeah, the fear-driven intensity versus a more compassionate-driven intensity. Maybe that's just called growing up. Maybe that's just called self-reflection. But there
It's
is a
all of that.
difference. Yeah,
It's all of
yeah,
that. It's also your innate desire to improve. You know, it's just
yeah.
like how
I
can
do
I
believe it's
handle this better?
conscious. It's a
How can I
conscious
handle
effort.
this better than I
Yeah,
might have, you know, years ago? And
yeah.
in my experience, when something like that happens, all these thoughts there's spinning around in your head like mad in like 10 seconds.
Hmm.
And it's amazing how you can process those things if you just give yourself a breath. You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
you let this guy show who he was to you, you know?
Hmm.
So the last few categories, the first one's called common humanity core aspects, and it says normalizes struggle. It reframes personal failure as a normal part of life that everyone goes through. And
Hmm.
to your point, and not, you know, everyone struggles. Everyone has a
Yeah, yeah.
hard
So now we're shifting more to the core, the common humanity, the core assets of humanity, where we all could be better humans and
time.
be
Hmm.
better to each other. Um, First thing is, again, don't listen to politicians and um, social media and all that stuff, because that's all they're really pushing out. Mostly is negativity of,
Well, there's an
for different
agenda.
groups.
There's an agenda to all of
Yeah,
it, you know, and you can
yeah,
call it power, you can call it control, you can call it all kinds of different things, but it's not
yeah,
authentic, you know.
yeah.
And then the second one says it reduces isolation, and isolation is becoming a big problem for all of us. You know, it shifts your mindset from why me to this is what it feels like to be a human. You
Mhm.
know, it's like
Oh,
it's
interesting. So it's what's happening. You're saying about this core aspect of is isolation is probably one of the core problems, right? Because so many people isolate, they don't go out and have these moments, or they don't have human interaction to where they can be human, because so much of it is their life is being lived through a screen. We talked about this earlier, the
yeah,
interaction with,
I think we kind of need to be reminded. One of my pet phrases, we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. But I think when you get out there in the world and you interact with humans, you're going to be reminded of what kind of struggles are out there, you know?
yeah. Well, that's what the next one says, right?
Connects to others. Yeah. It reminds you that your flaws connect you to the rest of the world instead of separating you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, this also it reminded me of our tagline, right? The imperfection is the perfection.
Hmm.
Um, that's what inspired the show 5 or more years ago. The Imperfect Men's Club was um,
Hmm.
embracing the reality that the imperfection is the perfection. We certainly aren't perfect, but you have to um, go into life knowing that, and then um, yeah, it all leads back to self-awareness. So,
Yeah, I mean, if you pay attention and you connect with other humans, this stuff will take care of itself.
mhm,
I think I think about the isolation thing a lot because I'm not that I'm isolated necessarily, but I think we all are more so than we used to be, and all it took was kind of COVID to show us what that looks like, and I
yeah,
don't think we've seen the end of that yet. There's one more category, and this will be of great interest to you. It's the psychological impact. And these three bullets under psychological impact seem to flow nicely, one leading to the next. The first one is that when you express self-compassion and compassion, that it removes shame. It stops you from feeling that your mistakes mean you are uniquely broken. And another thing I think we need to be reminded of, because when something bad happens, to me anyway, there's an immediate feeling of, and I don't wallow in it, but it's why did this happen to me? What's going on here? What did I do to deserve this? There's this, I guess that's why they're calling it shame, because if you're personally accountable, then one of the first things you do is say, how did I let this happen? You know?
mm,
But shame to me is like guilt, right? It serves a purpose, but not prolonged. You got to
mhm,
move forward, and compassion is a great way to move from shame
mhm,
to a better place psychologically.
mhm. That's
So
shame is something we don't talk much about it, but it's something that's often going on subconsciously in our mind, and understanding what that pain is, or shame, I should say, is a process in itself. But
yeah, no, I've seen a lot of shame because when you get fired from your job and you call Mark,
mhm.
you feel shame. When you get divorced, I don't care whether the guy
Yeah,
is.
shame is a result of failure, right?
It's well, but that's your immediate reaction. It's like I failed at this. How did I let this fail? And it's
Yeah,
conflicting because maybe you were successful your whole life, and then this one thing happens, and you're like, wow. And
yeah,
also, people don't like to talk about shame. They don't like to feel shame. They don't like to admit to shame.
yeah,
It's a very powerful emotion.
yeah,
The other thing it does, being compassionate, is it lowers the self-pity, and this to me is kind of the same thing, right? Rather than pitying yourself and getting wrapped up in your own story, everybody suffers, everybody
yeah.
struggles, It's like that old REM song, everybody hurts,
Mhm.
sometimes.
Mhm. So it keeps you from getting trapped into your own story by acknowledging that others suffer too. Yeah, that's compassion.
No question.
Yeah,
No question.
yeah,
And then the last one is that it builds empathy and it strengthens your bond with others because you see your shared struggles. So,
yeah, yeah. This is the one. When I looked into his eyes, I remember going back to a time uh, where I drove a car like that. Maybe not that bad. Um, I remember having insurance, but I also remember how expensive insurance was, and at that time in relationship to the amount of money I had, and I had appreciation why he didn't pay his insurance. I was thinking about all these things, right?
yeah.
He had to make a decision: do I pay for gas? Do I pay for the basic things? And so this empathy part was a big part of my decision. All these thoughts were going through my mind, and I saw myself in him at one point, and then that's when.
Yeah. Yeah. Empathy's like shame is very powerful in a negative fashion. Empathy is very powerful in a positive fashion. What I hear when you tell the story is
Yeah,
that you feel the contact and something like, what the fuck? But
yeah,
this is all I fucking need, right? And
yeah,
then
yeah,
this
exactly.
this guy's an asshole, and then all of a sudden, in the course of what appeared to be maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I don't
Yeah,
know,
max.
he went
Yeah,
from an asshole and you went from self-pity to I'm empathetic and he's just another human being that has his struggles today. And I'm not going to give him
Mhm.
any more struggles today. I'm letting him off the
The
hook.
difference is he was an honest human being because
Yes.
everything he said he would do, he did. I
Yeah.
said, follow me. He followed me and pulled
Yeah.
over behind me. I
Yeah.
said, give me your driver's license. He did. He told me the truth, and he never once made an excuse. He never once became confrontational. And yeah, I think
Well, yeah,
we got it right.
that's you did get it right. That's behavior that
No,
deserves to be
we, him and I
rewarded.
got it right.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
got it
Yeah.
right. I have to give him credit for being who he is and staying true to who he is. And
Well, you know what else would be nice to think? Whether it's true or not, we'll never know. But it'd be nice that is he going to share that story with his kids? Is he going to give them a life lesson? Number one, and
yeah.
number two, who else is he going to share that with? That's going to be able to spread the word that I just bumped into a really
Mhm.
good guy. I bumped into a compassionate human being, and
Yeah.
maybe it makes him more compassionate to the next person that he can help.
Yeah. All I know is one of the things that I remember he was talking about his kids. He dropped them off and he was driving back to Oregon. That's 10 hours away. And because he had a job in Oregon and not his brother. And so I believed him. That's
Yeah,
where he was going, to
yeah,
Oregon to work. So he was also demonstrating, one, that he cared about his kids, and two, that he had a brother uh, that obviously cared about him. They had a job. So, is the guy, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm probably not getting any money. It doesn't matter, but I had to make a decision, and
well, it doesn't really matter what
it
happens now.
doesn't.
It doesn't matter
You're
what
right.
he
Thank you.
does. Doesn't matter if he actually has a job. Doesn't even matter
It
if he
doesn't.
has kids.
It's a good
It
point,
doesn't.
Mark.
It doesn't matter, you
Yeah.
know. And
Yeah.
I'll end it with one of my dad's favorites. It's kind of germane to this: is if you're not being taken advantage every once in a while, you're
I
not
love
being
that.
nice enough to people.
Yeah, that's a
All right,
great one.
Jim.
I like
Thanks
when
for
you
the
share that
story,
with us.
man.
All right. All right. Till next week. Bye.
See you.